Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to have Morgan Nichols, our Main Street Alliance Director in Vermont, who has been very active on our paid leave issues, kick us off. Welcome, Morgan.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We're so glad you're here to learn more about this program and how small business owners can work together to win permanent leave. Main Street Alliance is a network of value-based small business owners who know that when their businesses do better, when their community and their workers do better. As you all know too well, many of our initial programs for small businesses did not work for us, and it was bigger businesses who got the bulk of the support. Small businesses across the country spoke up and about these problems. MSA was active in making sure our members were able to talk directly to elected officials about the problems and what needed to be fixed. It's through your stories and our joint advocacy that the American Rescue Plan passed in March, strengthened many of the programs for small businesses, including extending the critical emergency paid leave program. The program is better, but much more is needed. MSA is working with allies, including our partners at Small Businesses for Paid Leave, to advocate for more relief and for a stronger care infrastructure, including permanent paid leave. So today we are going to cover what is in the Families First COVID paid leave program, who is eligible for what and how you can apply. And really importantly, how small businesses can take the steps to receive those credits. Additionally, we want to share how small businesses can be involved to ensure that we win a permanent paid leave solution. At the end, we will have time for a Q&A. So please add your questions by clicking on the Q&A button down in the bottom. And we're going to dive right in. I'm going to hand it over to Cynthia.
Thanks, Morgan, and welcome everyone. Families First, or the FFCRA, is one of the first COVID relief bills that was passed when we first entered the pandemic. It's also the first national paid leave program that we have, making us one of the few countries in the world left without a permanent national paid leave program. And it's also a bit of a hidden gem. There's been so much focus on PPP and EIDL that many small businesses and sole entrepreneurs never heard about it. But our members who did find out about it found it an incredibly valuable component of their COVID relief. And now that the benefits have been extended and made retroactive, we want to make sure that all businesses and entrepreneurs who are eligible can access the benefits. So a very quick review. Generally, this program is for businesses with under 500 employees they are eligible for fully refundable credits for wages paid to qualified employees for COVID-related leave. And small business self-employed are also eligible for those credits. And the credits cover up to 2 weeks of sick leave and up to 10 or 12 weeks of paid childcare or family leave. So the program has gone through several changes, and we're not going to go into like the weeds here, into the details, but just want to give a few key differences between the phases that are important to understand what you can apply for and when it's available. So the original phase of the bill was initiated April 1st, and it went through the end of the year, through December 31st, 2020. And under the first phase of the bill, many businesses with under 500 employees were required to provide up to 2 weeks COVID-related sick leave and up to 10 weeks COVID-related childcare leave. And the costs of providing that care were fully refundable through tax credits. The self-employed were also eligible for those credits. The second phase, starting in January 1st, the mandate portion of Families First expired at the end of 2020. But the credits were extended so that businesses who have, and for businesses that hadn't yet used their allotment of credits in 2020, could roll those over into this first quarter. So you'd have a full year to be able to use those credits. And then the third phase under the American Rescue Plan, which just passed on March 11th, the program was further extended and expanded. The program is extended through September 31st, 2020, and the uses for the family leave were expanded beyond childcare leave. And most importantly, the employer coverage amounts were reset. So there's another 2 weeks of sick leave and 12 weeks of family leave that are available for use between April 1st, 2021 and September 31st, 2021. And again, the program is for both businesses who have under 500 employees and for the self-employed. And the program was made retroactive, which we'll discuss in a minute. So what types of leave are covered now? So from April 1st on, FFCRA programs cover COVID-related paid leave to employees and self-employed if you have coronavirus symptoms and are seeking a medical diagnosis, or you're awaiting a medical diagnosis, or if you're waiting for a coronavirus test or diagnosis. It's now also available if you're obtaining or recovering from a coronavirus vaccine. As it's also if you're subject to a quarantine that's been mandated by the government or recommended by a provider, or caring for someone who is, that's another qualifying reason. And then if you are caring for a child whose school or childcare is unavailable due to COVID, that's another qualifying event. So from April 1 on, these types of leave are available for both sick leave and family leave. Last year, while the sick leave covered most of these circumstances, the only type of leave for the 10-week family leave was for the childcare leave, if you had a child whose school was closed or unavailable due to COVID. Given that COVID recovery takes many people more than 2 weeks, we certainly had many members who, that was completely inadequate. We advocated to be able to have that time longer, and are thrilled that the medical leave now is extended for the full 12 weeks. Next, how much is covered? How much leave is covered? So from April 1st of this year on, tax credits are available for up to 14 weeks of paid leave. And that includes 2 weeks of sick leave and 12 weeks of COVID-related family and medical leave. The tax credits are for covered emergency paid leave taken by an employee for their own health, diagnosis, or vaccine, are 100% of that employee's regular rate of pay, up to $511 per day, or $5,000 total for that employee. So that's this. If it's a sick leave for yourself, for an employee, it's 100%. Tax credits covered for sick leave taken for an employee for caregiving needs are 67% of employees' regular rate of pay, up to $200 a day, or for a total of $2,000 per employee. And then the family leave, whether it's for you, family or medical leave, whether it's for yourself or caring for a family member, is again 67% of regular rate of pay, up to $200 for the 12 weeks. So to a total of $12,000 per employee. So if you add the two of those up, it's the potential of both the 2 weeks sick leave and then up to the 12 weeks of family or medical leave. These credits are the same whether they're for an employee or the self-employed. And for both credits, in addition to the amounts for pay, credits may be available for certain health plan expenses and payments other than that associated with qualified leave wages. So that's how much leave is covered. Now, how to apply for business. So the steps to apply for this business, it gets a little tricky here because there's several different ways to apply. and the process has changed slightly. But the good news is for sole entrepreneurs, which we're going to talk about next, it is much simpler. But for small businesses, what we're going to do is give you a quick outline of how it's different for each phase, and then share some resources with you that will help you understand how to do it how to get additional help to be able to figure this out. So if you have provided COVID-related sick leave or childcare leave in 2020 and have not yet applied for these tax credits, you still can. You can file an amended tax return retroactively for 2020 to claim these credits. If you have a payroll service or a tax consultant, that is by far the easiest route to do it. They're just beginning to roll out the ability to do this retroactively. The US Treasury has been running a major campaign sharing that this is available and important. So that's one resource, and they're going to be rolling out more information shortly. The one thing you'll need us to do is documentation of have a written statement from an employee and keep that on file. And then the last thing to know is, because there was some confusion around this, you can apply for Families First and for PPP. You just need to have it cover a slightly different time period than you can't cover the same employee for the same time period, both by PPP and for FFCRA. All right, so that's for 2020. Now for the first quarter of 2021, if you provided sick leave or childcare leave in the first quarter, the process is very simple. It's the same process that existed for last year. You can either file on your quarterly federal employment tax filing. It's all written into the form. It asks you the questions specifically, and we've included a link for the worksheet that now exists and has all the questions in it to be able to very clearly lay out what leave you provided and how to build it into your federal employment tax filing. And again, if you paid more than that in your employment taxes, that will be refunded to you. And then if you can't wait until the end of the quarter, which is true for most businesses, you can also file a Form 720 for the first quarter of 2021 advance reimbursement. And that means you just don't have to wait for the quarterly filing. You can get, let's say, I just paid out 2 weeks to this person and get it reimbursed quickly. One side note is this form is also the form that is used for employment retention credit. This is another incredibly valuable and underutilized program that's for all businesses that have employees should know about. It's another source of immediate cash for struggling businesses. So I urge you to also look up about that program if you're a business with employees. And then the last part is, again, for this period, have documentation, collect documentation from your staff. So for the rest of the year, from April 1st on through September 31st, we do not, because the American Rescue Plan just passed in March, we're still waiting for the IRS to update their frequently asked questions and their forms. We anticipate that the process for the rest of the year will be similar to it was in the first quarter, that you can both apply through your quarterly federal employment tax filings, and there will be some form to be able to apply for immediate advance reimbursement, but we need to wait to find out about that. So we're going to be monitoring the IRS form, and we will update you all as soon as we know about it. So some resources for you to be aware of. Next slide, Sarah. The IRS has frequently asked questions and instructions on their website for phase 1 and 2. We will be monitoring and hopefully soon they will be updating their frequently asked questions and forms for April 1 on. As I mentioned, treasury.gov has an active campaign encouraging small businesses to apply for any benefits that they paid leave that they covered last year retroactively, and have offered. It's a good place to send if you have questions from, from auditors or from not auditors, questions from your payroll company. You can direct them there. And then we found SCORE to be a really helpful for one-on-one support, extremely helpful. So we always suggest them for one-on-one support applying for COVID, these COVID programs. And then we've been keeping at Main Street Alliance and Small Business for Paid Leave, our resource page up to date, and there's a link to it there. So for sole entrepreneurs, it is even simpler. So you, because the tax filing for 2020 was delayed until May 17th, you can still claim these credits on your 1040 tax return form, and there is a specific fact sheet, worksheet to be able to fill out to back up your, to do the exact calculations on what you are eligible for. And then there will be a similar process that you're able to do on the 2021 tax return. The really good news is our friends at A Better Balance have a specific worksheet that is very detailed about how to apply as a self-employed individual sole entrepreneur for FFCRA, which we have a link for, and they have a legal clinic that they sole entrepreneurs are able to access. So definitely recommend that you call them with any questions that you have. So we've covered a lot really quickly. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions, and we're going to get to those shortly. But just want to say that, again, for our members who have found out about FCRA, it's been a great program. We want to make sure that everyone finds out about all of these, and to knows that they're available through until the COVID pandemic is fully addressed. So we're going to get to questions, but before we do that, we want to hear a bit more about our plans for being able to move to a permanent paid leave program in this country, and how you all can play an effort in that. And I'm going to turn this over to Dom, who's going to run us through that section and hear from our great small business owners who are on the call as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that really great explanation of the FFCRA. Obviously, we have seen that the pandemic has really demonstrated that a well-functioning economy needs some sort of mechanism to account for the time away from work that we all need at some point. During COVID-19, that's often meant caregiving duties as parents have adjusted to interruptions in education and childcare and distant learning. It's also meant pretty expected, but sometimes unpredictable instances where employees or business owners have needed time away to recover from an illness or to care for a sick loved one, or to protect public health. And what we've learned is that it's much easier for small businesses to cope with these common absences when there's a well-designed plan put in place. As Cynthia has mentioned, as the testimonial shown on the previous slide, businesses who've had access to the FFCRA have overwhelmingly approved of the policy's implementation and how it's worked. All this is to say that it's abundantly clear that it's high time for a permanent, affordable, and universal paid leave program. We are absolutely thrilled, Main Street Alliance as an organization, our members are thrilled that President Biden has included a plan for permanent paid leave in his Build Back Better agenda, and we're anticipating hearing more details about that effort in his speech next week to Congress. So it's paid leave is a key part of our care infrastructure, and we couldn't be more pleased that there's movement being made on that at the federal level. We're on the path to making national paid leave a reality, but the voice of small business and the small business community has been and will continue to be absolutely crucial to making paid leave a reality. So your voices, your experiences are really, really important. We're really fortunate to be joined here today by two Main Street Alliance members, two longtime advocates for paid leave. Tony Sandkamp is the owner of Sandkamp Woodworks in Jersey City. He fought for paid leave at the state level in New Jersey. He's continued the fight at the federal level, and we're very appreciative of his efforts. We're also joined by Chris Payant of Events to Remember in Southfield, Michigan, who's also a member of our paid leave working group, doing fantastic work advocating for a permanent paid leave solution at the federal level. They're both here to share a little bit about their experience advocating for paid leave, how a lack of a paid leave policy has affected them, and how paid leave has impacted them generally as an issue. So really pleased to have them here. And why don't we go ahead and start to hear from Chris, if Chris is ready to share.
Hi, my name is Chris, and my business name is Events to Remember, and we are a event planning company. And with the pandemic, is like, that industry got hit real hard, and pretty much, you really can't afford to miss work. So recently, I just had a COVID exposure that happened to my family. First off, though, I had my vaccine. My wife had her vaccine. Her parents had their vaccine, and my parents had theirs. So luckily, like in my little circle, everybody was kind of vaccinated for the most part. But I come from like a blended family. So I have 3 children, a 12-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old. And the 12-year-old and the 4-year-old, they came back from their father's house, and the 12-year-old basically told me that she couldn't taste or smell. So at that point, I had a lot of stuff going through my head, trying to figure out, okay, so who were we around? I know I took the vaccine, but it literally was, because they say it takes 2 weeks after you take your shot for it to come effect. So I was literally right at my 2-week part. So I'm over here like, well, do I have it? It's a chance that I can have it. So I know I went and got tested myself. Luckily, I came back negative, so did my wife. But I was thinking that my 1-year-old, it's a good chance that she didn't have it because she wasn't around them for a little bit. So we ended up having to quarantine. And with that being said, we both had to stay home because we had the 4-year-old and the 12-year-old downstairs and 1.5-year-old upstairs. And pretty much we couldn't just leave the 4-year-old to himself, and we couldn't just leave the 1.5-year-old to herself, which forced us both to pretty much stay home and had to split that. And with most Americans living like paycheck to paycheck, we really couldn't afford not having that check. And being an event planner and owning the business, I really don't want any employees or anybody to feel or face a bad situation like that. Luckily, we had the situation worked out with my partner, so I was able to get by, but not everybody has those opportunities, and that's why emergency pay leave is so important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. I really think, it's a story that we're hearing over and over again from business owners, from workers, and being able to have that flexibility to make sure that folks are making the right decisions, staying home, taking care of their families, while still earning that paycheck, while still earning their income from their business is super important. So thank you so much for sharing that. Next, we'd like to hear from Tony Sandkamp of Jersey City, New Jersey. Tony.
Thanks, Dominic. So I've been running Sandkamp Woodworks in Jersey City for now 30 years. It's kind of amazing to me to think that I've been that long, but I've been in my current location for about 20 years. So I've been experiencing, and I've been behind family leave because the last multiple years I've experienced both sides of family leave. Being in New Jersey, we've had a family leave program in place since 2009. And prior to that, I had an employee whose mother was dying in Florida and had to leave. And he didn't really even tell me about it. He just quit. And he was my most important employee. And And had I had family leave been in place at the time, I wouldn't have lost that employee. But a perfect example of it after, and after having family leave in place, I had an employee about 5 years ago now, during New Jersey's program. He came to me and said his wife was having twins. He needed time off to help her with the babies. And we filled out the paperwork together. He got family leave, stayed with me through it, and his kids are like 5 years old now. So because of that and other experiences that I've had as a business owner, I've seen what it has meant to me. And I think it's an incredibly important program that should not be just in certain states. It should be a federal, nationwide program. I think that small business owners need to all come together. And I think right now is the perfect time. I think most of the country and the Congress is aware of the need more than ever now after a year of COVID. And I think if we all get together as business owners, and I think the best way to do that is via avenues like the Main Street Alliance, we can get this over the top and get a nationwide program together. I think it's one of the few bipartisan issues that if you were to go to Congress today and you were to talk to any congressperson, they're going to tell you they're behind family leave. It's just a matter of how they believe that it should get done. But I think that the details are important, and small business needs to be on the front line in terms of how that happens, how it gets implemented. And I think it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen because of small business owners. And I'm glad to be part of it, and thank all the people at Main Street Alliance for putting all this together tonight. And hope you all get behind it as well. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Tony. Absolutely. And I think that I would just highlight a few things from what Tony had to say, is that now is the time. It really is. We are really moving close to being able to put this over the finish line. And another thing that Tony mentioned is that the details matter. Largely folks are convinced that paid leave is something that we should be putting in place, but hearing from business owners, hearing the real life stories, hearing those details are what's going to ensure we leave with a policy that works for small business owners, that works for our employees, and that works for our communities. So being able to share that information is absolutely crucial. So a few things that folks can do to help push this over the finish line is, first, we've got a few very easy steps that people can take right after this call. I'm going to share in the chat here the link to be able to share a letter to members of Congress. You can thank them for passing the American Rescue Plan. You can urge them to make paid leave permanent. It's on a great website, Small Business for Paid Leave, and it's a really easy way to have your voice heard. So I encourage you all to take the time now to click on that link, open up a tab in your browser, and come back to it as soon as we're finished with this webinar. It would be absolutely fantastic. And the second thing that folks can do, I'm going to put one more link here in the chat, is share your story. Just like Tony and Chris shared their story today, hearing these details are absolutely vital in making the case for paid leave. And so if folks want to click on that link, open another browser tab, there's a place on Main Street Alliance website where you can type in the details of your story. It's absolutely crucial for the public and policymakers to hear this. So if you've ever needed time off as a business owner but haven't been able to take it, please let us know. If your employees have needed time off but you've struggled to help them take that time off or struggled to pay for them to take that time off, please let us know. If you've lost employees like Tony has because they wanted to take time away and didn't think that they had an opportunity to take it and come back and have their job, that's an important story that folks need to hear. Even if you offer paid leave, for example, we've got many members who make the expense to offer it and do that as a way to help retain employees. But if offering that paid leave would be easier under a public system, more affordable under a public system, we'd love to hear that. Your stories absolutely matter. Third, a real simple way that you all can join in, if you all want to be a part of sharing your story, we've got a group of business owners from across the country that we're calling upon for rapid response actions, people who are going to be ready to be able to make the case for permanent paid leave. We expect that there's going to be lots of opportunities in the coming weeks and months to engage on paid leave. We know that the press is reaching out to us on a daily basis, asking to hear from business owners about paid leave. Likewise, policymakers, as the fight ramps up in Congress, are going to want to be hearing from business owners. So if you'd like for us to reach out to you when these opportunities arise, please let us know. I know that we have folks here who are dedicated and ready to join the fight. And so I've been adding things into the chat, and I want to give everybody else an opportunity to add something into the chat. If you can get your typing fingers going and just type in, "I'm in," and I'll show you how easy it is. You know, we'd be very glad to include you in the fight that we're bringing to Congress to put this over the finish line. Yeah, all right. So I'm glad to hear from folks who want to join that rapid response team. Really, it's going to be a great opportunity for people to get their experiences directly to the people who are making the decisions about this. Very lastly, we'd be very pleased for folks to help spread the word to business owners in your networks. We'll be following up after this webinar with a paid leave fact sheet, you know, some information that folks in your networks might be interested to hear about the paid leave program and why it's good for small business. We're going to send a link also to the Main Street Alliance new member forum. That's helping folks get involved and hearing about events and opportunities just like this one. And then, you know, you can share other information, or we'll be sharing other information that you can share with your networks as well. So we'd be very pleased if you'd help pass along those resources. The more that we have, more folks we have in this fight, the greater chance that we will have to succeed. And so very lastly, of course, raising your voice publicly on these issues is just as important now as it is ever. So please include us when you're speaking out. We have our Twitter handles here. We've got our Instagram. We've got our Facebook. Please include us in the conversation. We would love to be able to amplify your voices and help raise those as well. So we'll have some time for questions right now. Folks can ask about the FFCRA, those details. Folks can ask about the National Paid Leave Fight, what you can do to join, or any other questions that you have. But we're looking forward to hearing from you. Please go ahead and use the Q&A function on your Zoom. Thanks.
Thank you, Dom, and thank you to everyone who shared. We'll just start with a few questions that came in during the presentation. If you could maybe go over a few details of when we say documentation needed to be provided, what does that actually mean? And what type of documentation? Is it as simple as a letter, or is it a little more involved?
So there's two types of documentation that you need. One of them is the reasons that the leave was taken, and the other is how you did your calculations to be able to figure out how much you can be applying for in terms of tax credits. So for the documentation of the reasons for the leave, it can be a letter from an employee if it was for the for a quarantine, noting the time, you know, which district issued the order and for what period of time, and for the and if there was a healthcare provider who identified the need, like documenting that. And then for the documenting the how you made the calculation is much easier, because there's a whole set of forms that are now you can just fill that out as part of the process.
Thanks, Cynthia. Similar to documentation, but maybe more specifically, if you have a child, or an employee has a child whose school has opened, but the child still needs to stay home because of whether special needs or other reasons, does that work under the longer childcare leave? What sort of determines what is eligible for the childcare leave?
That is one that I think would be good to get some more specifics on. There are there are an extensive list of frequently asked questions in the IRS guidelines, and I can see if we can find that and share it out with you. I wouldn't want to give wrong information on that. I do know that when there was some, virtual options, that was still a possibility, but would want to, if the schools are fully back, would want to, I think there's probably more details that we should find the specifics on that. And it is also one you probably can call the legal clinic with. The number we gave is also probably, they probably have the detailed knowledge.
Thanks, Cynthia. If you haven't filed your 2020 taxes yet, can you apply for the tax credit when you do so, or do you need to do that at the quarterly, a different quarterly filing?
If you have not filed your 2020 taxes yet, you can still apply for 2020, and you provided, yes, and you provided care in 2020, you can still apply in 2020. And there's a big effort to push to make sure folks do that. So yes.
And if you have already filed your taxes, you can still do it retroactively, yes?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
You can just file an amended, an amended form.
Great. It doesn't seem like there are any more questions. Again, we have a few more minutes. If there are any more questions, you can pop them into the Q&A function at the bottom of the webinar. Of course, we will follow up with a recording of this webinar, as well as direct access to the slides you saw here, which include all the links to the worksheets, the take action forms, and any of the other resources that we mentioned here. And if you noted that you're in to help us push for a permanent paid leave program, we will certainly be following up, and we appreciate you adding your voice to this fight. Particularly small businesses, as we've said, are going to be key and critical, and so we really appreciate you not only learning about this program, but also pushing forwards for a permanent paid leave for all as well. We just had a new question come in through the chat, so we'll end on this one. So the question is, if you let your accountant know if an employee has taken the program, and they will know what to do, or how do you go directly to your payroll provider? How do you best kind of go about that? And then the second version of this is, does all of this apply to nonprofits as well?
The second one is easy. Yes, this applies to nonprofits. The first question is a little more challenging. We have found that sometimes our business owners know more about these programs than their accountants and payroll providers do. So I would say do both. One, alert them that you want to apply for the program, see what information they have, and then be prepared to be able to show them, direct them to various links, so that they're aware that, we've had some folks who weren't aware that you could apply, use the 720 form to, to get the reimbursement more quickly. And I'm sure that the word has not fully gotten out yet that you can apply retroactively, which is why we included the information from Treasury, so that folks have a more authoritative source to be able to steer folks to these new rules that have come down.
And then does this also apply to nonprofits? Yes,
it does. That was
go ahead.
That was a simple one I answered first, yes.
And another question is, can an employee take the emergency paid leave for a few hours a day rather than a consecutive time of days in a row? Can it cover certain sort of prorated hours? And if so, does the $200 a day cap apply?
That's a very good question. We do have people who have used the leave intermittently to be able to stretch it out, especially for some of the childcare support. So I do know that it can be intermittent. I don't know and if it is if you can do it more than just like a day a week. I don't know if it can be just a few hours. But again, we could look into that. I mean, it's 67% of the pay up to, there may be a way of doing that. It's a more detailed question than I know at the moment.
Thanks, Cynthia. It looks like we've answered all the questions that have come in. Again, if we weren't able to answer those questions, we highly recommend going to the resources mentioned on our small business resources slide. And again, thank you for everyone who's joined today. This is, as Cynthia mentioned, a gem of a program for those who are able to access it. Incredibly important. We will be going into deeper dives on a bunch of the programs coming out of the American Rescue Plan. And in particular, upcoming, we'll be hosting a webinar specifically for the sole proprietors and LLCs. And so if you have small business friends or peers in your network who that applies to, we'll be going into a deeper dive on programs across the board that particularly hit and matter for sole proprietors. So keep that on your calendar, follow us on our social media, keep abreast of everything that's going on, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you, everyone.